Yeah, I see a few faces that came again, so I appreciate that. Like my hope here is to mix it up again, but definitely just share God's word and just how He's helped me and just share my story. Again, I just want to start off by saying that I'm honored and I feel very blessed to even have people that would want to hear me talk about this. I mean, I think it's this is your personal faith journey is something that's different and unique for every individual. I think that God works in many different ways, and He knows exactly the way to reach and touch and communicate with each of us. And ultimately, we just have to open our hearts and our ears and our minds to listen to Him. And at least for me, and as I'll share with you, God's been working on me for a long time, and I believe and I hope that He's working on each of you as well. So I think my goal today is just, again, I'm just another, a guy. I look at myself and I really try to, not, humility is a big thing. It's a value that I'll talk about that I've learned over my life. But I think to me, if there are some things that I talk about today that are reflect and you can identify with, I think as Christian leaders and individuals in the community, and ultimately just people that are fighting the good fight every day. We all struggle. We go through the ups and downs in life, and so hopefully from that angle, there's maybe an aspect of that you guys can identify with. I guess I'll kind of start today, give a little bit of background on myself, just so you guys know who I am and what my background is. I mean, I want to begin by saying it's kind of cool. My father, Lyle, is here today, which means a lot to me. And my dad's cousin, Doyle, who kind of is like a brother to my dad, is here as well. So I really appreciate them showing up. And I see lots of familiar friends and faces, close friends and constituents. So that again, means a lot to me. Again, about myself personally, and kind of where my faith journey begins, I guess, is, as you can see here, I'm wearing red today, and it's Husker Friday, so, and I got my Husker socks on and all that, so we're Go Big Red. So I say that because I think my roots and my family heritage is a big part of my faith journey. I come from a family that I grew up here in Lincoln, born and raised, but my entire family lineage, my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, every single relative pretty much, all stems from a little small Danish community about 10 miles north of Aurora. It's called Marquette, Nebraska, and you go about 3 miles east as the crow flies, and there's a little itty-bitty small church called Cromer, a little country church. So my whole family's in this little cemetery. So it's amazing. I mean, it's something that, I kind of took for granted, but I've realized as I've gotten older that I'm a student of history as well as kind of this person. I've always been passionate about technology and things. And I always say you got to kind of know where you've been, as well as where you're at and where you're going to be. So I think the context is a big thing for me, and it's a part of the way that I try to handle myself in business and understanding that of what's the deeper meaning, what's that about. As far as my journey, and I guess how it begins and how it's, I'll kind of pick up as I was a little bit older, I guess it was a crescendo. There's definitely, and I would say, there'll be some moments here I talk about where I would say my faith went from more of an intellectual understanding to truly an emotional, heartfelt understanding. But I was, grew up in the church. Again, I was very, very blessed to have an incredibly supportive family unit around me. I'm a teammate mentor, and have also through my wife's family, not everybody's blessed with having two parents. And, I've got, like I said, my teammate, father's in jail, different things like that. So you start sort of counting your blessings and you realize the kinds of things that I had. So definitely the faith aspect of what was taught in my family, and just really the support, again, like I said, my father who's here today, just was a man of amazing integrity. And I saw him live his faith every day, the way that he, held himself in business and the way that he interacted with people. I could always tell how my parents were that juxtaposition of kind of that small town, kind of country, community church feel with, living in Lincoln and doing that kind of thing in a bigger city. So, and then I would say my mother, she's and again, and from a business perspective, my dad has taught me as much as anyone. I've been trying to soak up knowledge from him, and since I was about old enough to walk. People used to say, Jay, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was I want to be like Dad. That was like really a big deal. Or a computer guy, I think was the thing I would say. Now my mom on the flip side, which was, again, it's those that know me, I'm kind of this oxymoron. I guess I'm a techie guy on one hand, and I'm kind of a creative person on the other hand. I'm an artist. And so my mom's a piano teacher, has had her own business for 35 years. And did that as a way, both it's her passion, she's incredibly talented in music, and that's, again, was a big influence of mine. And my mother always has had an amazing faith as well for Christ, and that was a big part of it. And then my sister, very, very close to her, she's 5 years younger than I am. People ask, I think as far as some of the leadership things I learned or some of the things I thought about is, as when I was a little boy, I said I was going to be a big brother, and that was a big deal. And I really took that seriously. And so as a result of that, I think it prepared me for some of the things that I'll talk about later as far as, when you have, people that are the weak or the individuals that are vulnerable. I think it's really important that in people in positions of leadership to take care of those individuals and to really, really support them. And so, needless to say, my sister, I always kind of took care of her and whatnot, and I'll certainly share more about how she helped me in my journey, very, very much so. But she's got a master's in divinity from Duke. She actually married my wife and I when I was remarried, and just an amazing person. So again, I think I can't really talk about my faith journey without really talking about my family. So I guess to me, from the business sense, as Chris mentioned, my passion for the industry that I'm in, and the passion for helping people and relationships, and ultimately how to kind of reconcile my faith, that all began in my college years. And I tell people, guys, I don't know what other people were like when they were in college, but it was one of the most amazing times in my life. It was a time of exploration. It was a time of spiritual awakenings. It was a time of discovering myself, and it was a time where I use the word insatiable appetite for knowledge. I had tons of fun, but it was like once we got out of high school and we got into a position, and for those here that have been in business or had the opportunity to own or be in positions of leadership, if you're in a place that you love, it's amazing. I mean, it's like you wake up every morning and it's a brand new day. So bottom line is I kind of got early. I caught the bug quick. And again, a lot of it stemmed from my family, from the mentorship I got, and really more importantly, it came from sort of a purposeful desire to, try to do things, again, not in a judgmental way, but do things the way that God intended us as business leaders. And clearly, as I matured, I started to see that there was a great disconnect. I had the opportunity while in college to work for some awesome companies, and I always say where I got my business education was definitely through my father and my grandparents who had their own business, and my aunts and uncles and everything. So I learned a lot about this kind of fighting the battle of how do you be an owner, and how do you deal with the challenges of integrity and the challenges of how you reconcile some of those things. So I can see some of that. And I was ready to tackle that. I was ready to fight that good fight. About this time, I meet my ex-wife, and you know, as we all do in college, we're, you know, in some cases finding the people we were going to be with, and you know, my journey begins, and I graduate from college and founded my first business when I was 19, and then ultimately it was called Graphically Speaking. My first partner I met in an entrepreneurship class, and we founded Agilon then my senior year in college, and lo and behold, I graduate, and that's what I do. I'm like, holy smokes, I got a job. So I never did the whole, you know, resume thing or whatever. I just literally, I graduated, you know, on a Saturday, and that Monday I was working in my studio apartment. For those that are owners, I think, and for those that have, again, been in positions where you've had to make tough decisions, whether it's in business or personal, you'll understand when I say that there's a unique bond that we have in that, you know, you learn very quickly that there's a reason why the majority of the business out there fail. And some of it may be financially, some of it may be lack of resources, sales growth, different things. But I, you know, I think for me, the immediate thing that began for me was the reconciliation of that pressure and fighting the doubts that I had personally growing up, and trying to overcome those through being a business owner. And as I, you know, crescendoed and ultimately got married, the pressures of business were astounding. You know, on the one hand, Agilon was great. You know, it was growing. You know, we had good times. We had some tough times. I went through a buyout and ended up buying my first partner. And from a faith journey standpoint, you know, I was engaged with God. I mean, Christ and I think we're connected. But I was, you know, I think for many of us, you get distracted. I don't know, you know, it's very easy. I'm trying to remember John Radway's quote, but it's the busy one. Can you do it for me, John?
It doesn't make you bad, it makes you busy.
Exactly. So I think that distraction is something that really, you know, I think we all deal with, but I know definitely from a faith standpoint, I started to struggle with. I was the eternal optimist. I was going to go fight the fight. You know, I was like, golly, why can't, you know, this stuff should just be able to happen? Well, you know, again, as I'll share, you know, myself personally growing up, I would say that I was kind of the kid that, you know, I got along with everybody, but I was certainly never the most popular, but I wasn't necessarily, you know, I kind of just, I didn't fit. And I did, I went through, I got picked on different things and stuff, but I think more importantly is that I always felt this strong desire, and it definitely from my faith and from my family and from my relationship with Christ, that humility was a big thing. Humility was a big deal, in that I always felt that, you know, okay, my desire to be an owner was never about power. It was never about greed. Those things certainly are temptations, and they become a part and a challenge for owners that are chasing the dream. I mean, the American dream kind of idea. So for me, what I struggled the greatest with, and I would say for many of us, I'm sure we've all experienced this, is reconciling your faith with this business world. How do you mix those two things together? And for me, I'm still trying to figure that out, quite frankly. That's an area that is not easy. And you know, to me, I think we start, you know, tricking ourselves to believe that we can do that ourselves. We can figure it out ourselves. We can fix things. You know, I think my family was one that was very, very, you know, like my dad and my grandfather is like, you know, we're problem solvers. On the one hand, like I said, I'm an artist, and I love dealing with computers and technology, but I always sort of saw the world in a way of problem solving and crunching, and how do we figure this out, and how do we resolve it? So by nature of who I am, it definitely caused me to sort of naturally, no, I'm going to just fix it. I'm going to fix this. I can fix this. You know, that's kind of the typical guy thing, right? We're going to all just fix it. you know, for those that are, I'm assuming some, most are married, you know, that's the number one thing you don't do with your wife is they're talking to you and they're concerned about something, probably don't want to try to fix it. You want to listen.
Amen.
Exactly. But I think in addition, as I was a business owner, guys, I mean, I share this, is that my personality of who I am, I tell people I'm split between my mother and my father. My dad is, I think, more of that, you know, like I remember one of my dad's quotes was, okay, you know, when crap would happen, he's like, well, panic's a good option, Jay. So, like, my dad is always my voice of reason. He's the guy that I always would look to for that voice of objectivity. My mother has a heart of gold and is one of the most caring and compassionate people I know. And so I tell people, you know, I think as a guy, you know, it's not acceptable to be touchy-feely. You know, we got to do the guy stuff, and trust me, love guy things as much as anybody. But, you know, I spent a lot of my early career, especially, trying to define what was I? You know, what kind of person was I? I frankly was ashamed. I didn't like how I was built. And deep down, that sat there. So I'm doing my business thing. You know, I'm attempting to connect with God and kind of coming in and out of moments of connection. And to me, my faith at that time was sort of based on, if I had a good day, God was great. If I had a bad day, God sucks. Well, and that sounds silly when I say it now, but it's this mindset that we get into, that life is going to be easy, that the challenges that we face. Why me? I mean, it's the never-ending. What have I done to deserve this? As Agelon began to crescendo, we began to grow. You know, Matt, who was my right-hand man back at Agelon, who was an amazing man that worked for me during that time, saw this journey. I mean, he knows what I'm talking about. And there were times where I handled the pressure well, and there were times that I wasn't. But, you know, I know as a person, I you know, tried to do the best I could. And ultimately, as this moment, as being a business owner, and trying to juggle that, and trying to, you know, take care of my clients and people and payroll and everything, you know, growing now from 5 to 10 to 15 employees, my marriage starts to fall apart. And on top of this, I had, as a 16-year-old, again, I was never the biggest dude in athletics, but I ran cross country, and I always was, for those that know me, I'm either with my family, I'm either, you know, working, or I'm at the gym. And so trying to stay healthy, I always wanted to, you know, last. I always wanted to, like, my pops was one that would play basketball with us. He played church ball with us till he was in his late 50s. I wanted to be able to do that. So I wanted to, it was more about wanting to be a grandfather that could run around with his grandkids someday. I hurt my back when I was, so again, place I loved, I was telling David, I worked at Nebraska football games. I sold Coca-Cola when I was a scrawny kid, and did it for 7 years during the glory days. Saw some great games. It was awesome. And it was incredible. For those that have kids, that is like honestly one of the coolest jobs to have, is to sell concessions at those games. So I started off as a pop kid and then did pizza. Well, I weighed about $1.05 at the time, and I picked up 3 racks of Coke. And if those that remember, this is back when the Coke had the cellophane top, so you dump and you could Coke all over you. Well, I ended up tearing a lumbar vertebrae.
Ooh.
And 16. So I had a back problem, and you know, I went through tons and tons and tons of therapy. Ultimately, made it so I couldn't run, different things. So I've had chronic pain since I was 16, every day. Still have it today. So that was eating at me. So that's one thing that's kind of festering, and I'm trying, and so I'm pissed about that. God, you know, I'm young, I take care of myself, I'm healthy, yada yada, and here, you know, I can't. God, what's the problem? Why? You know, the surgery option wasn't going to make sense, and it was going to chance that it would potentially make me So I couldn't have kids. I'm like, okay, we're not doing that. So that's kind of festering. The business here, is stressful. And like I said, I got married, and the business is just, it's eating me alive. The pressure, the stress, I'm angry. I'm angry at God. I mean, I remember one of the things I mentioned, I think I shared this with my parents, and I'm sure Matt even heard me say this, is, God can't be payroll. Boy, was I wrong. But bottom line was I was upset. I was so angry at Christ and just how here I'd been given what I thought was this, here, Jay, go do this. Okay, all right. So I go do it, and then I'm like, what the heck? This sucks. This isn't fun. This isn't good. Here I'm in pain every day. My wife is miserable. She doesn't want to be around me. And, my business, I'm just trying to struggle to get by. And I'm sure for all of us, again, we all go through those periods in our life. And it was very dark. Bring up my verses here. Ultimately, I did everything I could. Continued to go to counseling, try to save the marriage. For those that have been through divorce, it is excruciating. As I think one person shared, it's kind of like someone saying, "I hate you," and dying at the same time. My ex-wife, who I still pray for this day, I just didn't want to be with me anymore. And went through some challenges. I continued to support her and love her, but bottom line was, after 10 years of being together, she'd had enough. And it was at this point that I would say, I just, I think from a faith and a spiritual, I just didn't know what to do, because for this equated the ultimate embarrassment. Here I grew up in a family that I really prided myself in the sense that one of my mentors was my pastor from church growing up. And as he would teach us about marriage, it was more about a promise. How good is your word? So for us, where we came from, we strove to, when you made a promise, if I said I do, I'm going to stay with you no matter what. So that was an embarrassment that just threw me into a spiral, personally, spiritually. And God bless Matt, who was here. He was keeping Angel on afloat during this time. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. During this process, and again, I think I challenge all of us as you hear my story, is to, we start to put our security in material things. I had bought stuff and, bought a house and, had gadgets and all kinds of different things. And as a result of the divorce and everything, financially, I lost everything. I was pretty much had nothing but my clothes, a few items. I was trying to sell the house, and I had to live in my parents' basement. So here I am, I'm an owner. I'm almost broke, almost bankrupt, and embarrassed that I'm divorced. I'm living in my parents' basement at age 30. So I turned 30, and this is literally, I remember my 30th birthday, and I had, my wife had filed for divorce 10 days before that. And I'm like, wow, I guess 20s were cake compared to this. So needless to say, this is the beginning of, I would say, the bottom and the journey back to kind of where I'm at. I sat in my parents' basement and again, praying, reading, and this was again where I would say my sister was an unbelievable support. Growing up, I was a big support for her, and I really, really engaged her and tried to cheer her on and be there and help her and listen to her, and I just, you know, I mean, as you learn when you're divorced, people judge you, they assume things, you find out who your real friends are, and all of a sudden it was just like the whole support group just kind of disappeared. And that's obviously when my family really stepped in and was incredible. And it was at this point that my sister, who shared with me some of the challenges that she was facing. And as I told you, my sister has a master's in divinity. But my sister, you know, was very anxious. It was very difficult for her to speak publicly about things. And so she had absorbed herself in the Word as a way of coping and reconciling some of the challenges and difficulties that she had faced. And so I began the process of working with her and trying to start that process of seeking Christ more wholeheartedly. You know, I think this is one of the things I wanted to mention that I did last time is, you know, I hear people say, just turn your cares over to God. Turn your cares over. Let Him carry the load. What does that mean? Like, I'm trying to do that. What does that mean? What does that mean to sit and turn your cares over? Well, the issue, looking back, is I still was ashamed of who I was. Because the bottom line, and for those that have read, and I'll the book, I just lost it now. Little book called that Heaven's for Real. Thank you. To me, the notion, the idea of strength being found in weakness is when Dara introduced me to this verse, and I'll share this with you from 2 Corinthians 12:19. It said, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." That's a powerful verse. It was the beginning of me truly changing my perspective and really understanding what your relationship with Christ meant. Complete submission. Intellectually, I got it. I believed, but I didn't know how to apply it. How do you, and that required facing the deep down dark place that God knew it. And He's like, I love you, my son. No, I can't. I don't want you to see this. I was ashamed. And I kept guarding myself from Christ. I kept guarding Him from really seeing and exposing the true challenges that I faced. So the irony is, as I go through this period, I ultimately then, I'm struggling at this moment. Like I share with people, people ask me, are you suicidal, Jay? Let's just say this. I did not want to live. I was so completely at the end of the road that it was the beginning of these conversations and then the reconciliation of understanding that God loved me no matter what. It didn't matter if I was divorced. It didn't matter if I had nothing. It didn't matter if I succeeded. It didn't matter if I had $1 billion. It didn't matter. For God, He loves you regardless. Those are things. This is like one of the things I think my sister and multiple people have shared that I've kind of adopted is that this is just God's stuff. We're just borrowing it. If you really think about it in terms of the eternal payoff activities, as John would say, versus high payoff activities, is that at the end of the day, what things are you putting your stock in? Things are going to go up, things are going to go down. Where is your security? Where is the place that is going to take care of you? And for me, again, we were sharing earlier, I'm Danish in heritage. And one of the quotes is, you can always tell a Dane, but you can't tell them much. And point being is, I was stubborn. I would not allow, it's like God kept tapping saying, I'm here. I love you. It's okay. I got it. I got it. It's okay. It was at this point that, for those that have struggled with mental illness, I couldn't get out of bed. I started having anxiety attacks, and I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression, which was an ultimate embarrassment. I'm like, great. Now I have chronic pain, divorced, failed, trying to run a business, barely floating. God, I just suck. And as I continued, that understanding ultimately was the beginning of me then saying, all right, I've got two choices. I can get busy living or get busy dying, green and growing, ripe and rotten, whatever you want to call it. But I had these challenges, and I'm like, okay, I need to do something. And so I ultimately then, got on eHarmony in my parents' basement. And I'm like, okay, I'm still struggling with these things, these demons, these untruths, as I will start calling them now. And but I knew, as I'm seeking God, as I'm being humbled over and over again, it's like He's calling me. It's like, just hang in there. I think one of the things that's cool about the stories in the Bible is it talks not so much about the prevention of issues, but the deliverance. I mean, think of all, for those that are read and for those that are not, the stories that talk about, whether it's David or Moses or, Jesus himself. I mean, you have all these instances. Daniel in the lion's den, it's like it's deliverance. Job, I mean, it's not that things go great. God's message is about how He delivers people from the stuff that sucks. That's the amazing part. We live in a world of sin. We're fooling ourselves if we think it's going to be all puppy dogs and rainbows. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't seek happiness and seek refuge. But what are you seeking refuge in? Is it in the ups and downs of your business? Is it in material possessions? Because the relationship with Christ is solid as an oak. It is there. It has been, is there now, and always will be. God is omnipotent, omniscient, all-knowing. He's always there. So for me, I had to keep getting humbled and keep getting like, that's right, Jay. No, you just got to quit trying to do it yourself. Let me help you. My wife, who I'm married to today, I consider my best friend and my soulmate. She taught me more about humility and about compassion, and ultimately about my faith than as much as anybody. I mean, I feel that it takes a village to raise a kid kind of thing. I feel I've been blessed by numerous mentors, people like John Radway and John Degner and so forth. But I think that my wife was the first person that saw me in the raw. So when I met her, and we had a storybook kind of getting to know each other and whatnot, and she moves up to Lincoln, and the second she gets up here, I at this point I had was preparing, and I was getting ready to sell my business at this time. I was saying, you know what, I think I need to try to fix some of the financial burdens I've gone through. I'm kind of burned out. Maybe it's time to do something different. My anxiety and depression up to this point I had not really done much with. I just kind of like, okay, it's kind of there, well, just whatever. And it just, she got up here and I couldn't even barely function. So here we're supposed to be having this honeymoon time of being together, and I'm barely even to get out of the house at times. So we immediately walked right into a very, I would say, here's a moment where in my past marriage, my ex just ran away. And I'm going through some very, very substantial changing aspects as it relates to my faith. And as we continue, I start becoming comfortable with this notion of having anxiety and depression. I start getting treatment. I start going through this. I ultimately, like I said, sold my business. I had the chance to work with Matt and Trent over at Pickering, which was a great experience. Again, I always say to people, for those that have been owners, it's probably the best thing in the world for an owner to be an employee as well, because you learn a lot. Because for me, I forgot what it was like to be an employee. And those guys taught me a ton. And things didn't quite work out the way that I was hoping, but that was okay. But it continued to not, I was chasing this thing, and financially things weren't working, and I was struggling with depression, and I was going through med changes, and I'm just this big up and down, up and down, up and down. And I mean, we're having troubles in our marriage now. So now I'm married the second time. I'm scrambling to try to figure out what to do. My identity has always been defined by my business, not necessarily by my relationship in Christ. And I guess, lo and behold, I find out I'm going to be a dad. And for timing purposes, we did also go through a miscarriage, which was tough. But bottom line is we ended up, for me, parenthood, fatherhood was always a desire of mine. I always wanted to be a dad. I always wanted to have children. And my ex didn't want to. And so Holly and I, that was something we prayed about constantly. And it was at this point that I started to have a reawakening. I started to truly start to understand. And I think for those that have kids, I think when you're a parent, you get a glimpse of how much God loves us. My daughter, who was born a year and 3 months ago, and it was at this time I made the choice, and it was a God hit me over the head moment as right before she was born. He was like, all right, Jay, you need to go back to doing what you were doing. And you need to go back to what you were good at. And as you were helping people. You were helping people solve techie marketing things. And you're okay at it. And it's all right. Just trust me. I know you don't understand the plan. Just trust me. Submissive to God's plan. That's what it means. It means trusting. You don't know. What does faith mean? Faith means letting go of what we're trying to control. What do we do? It's like we're taught to do all of that, and it's like the older you just let go more and more. So I did that, and I began Turbine, and I was like, okay, I guess this is what God wants me to do. When my daughter was born, it was like a lightning bolt that struck me. There had never, I can't, it was like it validated for me why I was built the way I was. Because I loved her so much. And it inspired me to seek Christ, and it got across the thing, and it helped me start to really embrace the humble and the submissive aspect of dealing and working with Christ and seeking truth. And I'm now expecting a little boy, and Lydia's a year and 3 months. For me, there's challenges every day, and I tell people that I guess my story is that the fight doesn't stop. Sure, I had some very dark times, and frankly, those dark times and those afflictions, especially my anxiety and depression, actually brought me much closer to God. It's made me a better person. But I struggle every single day with it. Some would complain. There's days that it annoys me, but it's there. I don't let it define me. Because those afflictions, those challenges, those areas, those weaknesses is what has brought me closer to Christ. 2 Thessalonians, but the Lord is faithful. He will establish you and guard you against the evil one. For me, that's what my anxiety and depression, it was noise, untruth. So for me now, my faith is not an intellectual one. It is a fundamental part of who I am. I don't separate it anymore. And my daily journey, what I do every day, I struggle, I have good days, I have challenges. And there's days that I get far away from Christ. I'm human. But I think the important thing to remember is that He's always there. He's always there. And He's seeking each of you. You just have to seek Him. So my conclusion is this, is that I challenge each of you to think about, what do you entrust as your measures of security in your life? What are the things that you truly, if you were to lose everything, and I mean not just possessions, what if everybody, like loved ones, how would you respond? I mean, it would be horrible. But how much do you really trust in Christ and trust that He's delivered us? He won. God won. God won. Newsflash. I mean, yeah. Satan won here, but he didn't win eternal. So to me, I challenge each of you to let go of that, and pray to let go of that bondage that holds us captive from being in God's arms on a daily basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.